Welcome back to Tied Down TV, the punk rock pin show with me, Danny.
And Geoff.
And today we're picking our top 5 celebrities who are punks. Now, some of them are obvious, obviously. We know about some of them. We did a video similar to this, didn't we, a few months ago, where we did top 5 people who you didn't know had a punk history in bands.
Yeah.
So, this video is somewhat different because it's literally just celebrities who are punks, who have come from a punk background.
Yep.
Who they might necessarily be in bands to some degree, I guess, but that's not what they're known for.
Yeah, they're celebrities in other fields.
Yeah. So, the celebrity, are you a fan of the celebrity? Are you a celebrity liker?
I mean, I don't know.
Well,
I mean, how do you answer the question?
Well, a lot of punks don't like celebrities, death to the rich and all that.
I mean, look, we'll put all the politics aside and that. When it comes to like having a celebrity shoved down your throat a lot, you can get quite annoyed with that person regardless of what their output is, whether they be musician, actors, whatever. You'll just be like, I'm fucking sick of them.
Yeah.
I don't like the way they're worshipped. I don't like that whole aspect of it. I don't like the way media portrays and tries to portray certain celebrities.
Yeah.
But all that aside, you know, a lot of them are still people who've worked and grafted to get to the point they're at.
Yeah.
Some of them haven't, but some of them have.
And for that reason, you can't, for these lists, you can't cheat and just say, you've got to give reasons why you like this person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So you're putting yourself on the line somewhat, aren't you?
I think so.
For a call out, if people don't agree.
Well, that's fine, but we're always on the line for a call out, let's be honest.
Yeah. So you go first on this one.
Okay.
Don't go that first.
I know. Okay, alright, well, first one I'm going to pick, I'm going to go Justin Theroux, however he pronounces it. I always say Theroux because he's Louis Theroux's cousin. He's an actor, I think film, writer thing as well. He was in a TV programme which I really loved called The Leftovers. He was the lead and that was really fucking good. And he grew up in DC. He was born in the early 70s, so as you can imagine, growing up in DC into the early to mid 80s. He's said many times that when he heard Minor Threat and discovered that world, like that took him, he realised that, it wasn't just songs on the radio, this was a movement, it was people, it was a thing. And he's quite often, I've seen loads of pictures of him in Minor Threat shirts, Black Flag shirts, Crass shirts, all that kind of stuff. He's almost an A-list actor, I guess. He's been in, and he was in the most recent thing, I think, was the Beetlejuice sequel. Like I say, I like him in The Leftovers. I don't know a ton about him outside of that, although I've seen him in a few other things, but I really like that show. And he's also an avid band t-shirt collector. I've heard him in an interview, and he was talking about his band shirts, and some of the ones he said that were his favourite he picked were like early DC hardcore ones and things like that, but he's got a wide collection of all different genres. That's his thing. Like, he loves band t-shirts, and as you and me both do as well, I always find a little kindred spirit with someone who likes that as well. So yeah, that's my.
So you're a fan of the guy though, outside of him just being into punk?
Yeah, that's right. I loved the show. He was in The Leftovers. I thought he was brilliant in that, and that's that kind of And I've seen, like I say, I've seen him in various other things. I always think he's great. Heard him in a couple of interviews and came across really well. And he talked quite passionately about punk and hardcore a little bit in the one of the ones I listened to as well. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go Stuart Pearce. Even though he once played for Man City, it's very rare that I would ever like a player that played for Man City, but Stuart Pearce is going to go...
Well.
Sorry?
I said, didn't he manage them as well? Sorry.
I'm not sure, but anyway. Stuart Pearce, basically my earliest memory of Stuart Pearce would be Euro 96, and his celebration to the penalty he scored against Spain, which I think ended up being one of the most memorable images of the tournament, was when he was going, come on, like that. And I guess that, along with his kind of tough style, gave him the nickname Psycho amongst, I think, Forest fans. But yeah, I always liked Stuart Pearce because he always gave everything for the national team. Mm-hmm. He's always screaming the national anthem out. I know a lot of, depending on what political... Let's not go to get into politics. But one of the things I always really like about Stuart Pearce as well is his very unbiased sports commentary. Now, everyone knows I'm a big listener of TalkSport. I listen to TalkSport all the time. And anyone listens to TalkSport, they probably have people they can't stand on there. Stuart Pearce, I really like that he's really unbiased. And another thing, he's always doing quizzes about punk music on there.
Yeah.
Everyone knows he's a massive Sex Pistols, Stiff Little Fingers fan. He can often be seen at gigs in his Harrington.
Yeah.
Big punk fan. He says he used to always listen to punk as a younger man and uses before he was a footballer. He used to use his baseball bat under his bed as an air guitar.
Nice.
He said he just loved the raw aggression and high energy of punk. He often does, if you listen to hear him on a Saturday evening on the radio on TalkSport, he often does a quiz where he plays a little bit of a song and the fellow presenters have to guess it. Unfortunately, he's often on with Gabby Agbonlahor, who's an absolute idiot who doesn't know anything. But yeah, another thing as well that I think you got to take into consideration with him as well is if you read Roy Keane's first autobiography, not the second one, the first one. When Roy Keane first joined Forest as a youngster, he talks so highly of Stuart Pearce. I guess at the time, Forest were... I don't know if it was around the time, maybe Brian Clough had really hit the drink and it was... Peter Taylor had took over and it was all kind of falling apart, and Roy Keane's state out was Stuart Pearce, who pulled every player in that squad together, and he was like a man amongst boys. And if Roy Keane, who doesn't seem to respect anyone, if he's talking highly of you, you know,
it's a rare thing, isn't it?
I love listening to Stuart Pearce. I love listening to his stories, and he's one of the pundits who played for one of the enemy that I really respect.
Nice. He was great, Stuart Pearce. All right, pick number 2 for me. I've gone for Chris Packham, who is probably more known in the UK than anywhere else, but he hosts Springwatch. He used to host a Really Wild show, for those of you who remember it, back in the 90s as well. He's been a OG punk really. He was in a band, I think in 77, called Titanic Survivors. He said when he found punk, I think he's diagnosed as Asperger's now, autistic maybe, but he obviously didn't know that as a kid, and punk kind of gave him this direction and pulled him into something he felt quite passionately about, and he still carries a lot of that with him. He said he's vegan, he's pro animal rights, things like that. He still listens to a lot of punk and post-punk as well. I know he's a big fan of like bands like The Fall and things. He's actually got a CBE though, which he said himself, like as a younger man, if he knew he'd have a CBE, he's kind of turned into maybe the thing that he hated when he was young. But he still carries a lot of the ethics and the spirit of punk with him, and I just like the guy. I don't watch Springwatch all the time, but when I've seen it, I was enjoying. But I've seen him in other interviews, and I tell you what, I did see him on something once, and he was talking about during Springwatch, he through the whole episode, he tried to get song titles of The Cure all the way through it. So he'd be trying to like, how did he do it? And he said something about killing, and so he ended a sentence with killing, and then the next one was an Arab Beatle, so it was like killing an Arab. That kind of thing. I found that quite amusing when you saw the clip of him doing it. It was really fucking funny.
Well, we were discussing this last week, and I told you why I don't like him, didn't I?
Yeah.
And I am a bit of a Springwatch watcher, believe it or not. And one of the things I don't like about this guy is he seems to. I know it's nature, and I know it's natural, but I don't like it when I'm watching it and you see a sparrowhawk swoop down and get like a baby squirrel or something, and he show it and he goes, "Oh, look at that beautiful sparrow, take that baby squirrel off its mother and rip it apart." And he loves it, you know what I mean? And I can't stand seeing stuff like that. So when he's like getting off on the fact that like a predator is taking a... Again, it's nature and it's natural.
And he's very pro.
But every time he goes on about it, I feel like just giving him a slap. But yeah, I'm not a fan of him that much because of that.
I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, there you go anyway, that was my second pick.
My next pick is Robbie Wildcat, aka Robbie Brookside, a ex-professional wrestler, now professional wrestling trainer, employed by WWE, and a member of our own Liverpool hardcore scene many years ago. Was a Planet X regular. There's brilliant thing on YouTube. I don't know if it's still there. It was like a I wouldn't know if you'd call it a documentary. It was called like the Robbie Brookside Video Diaries or something like that. Yeah. I think it was like an hour or a couple of hours long, and it was just him documenting himself going around all these amateur shows. At the time, he was tag teaming with William Regal as one half of the Golden Boys, I think they were called. And really interesting guy. I've never met him. I'd love to meet him because I bet he's got some amazing stories. But one of the one of the stories that Simon Kelly has told me about him actually a few times, and I always find it quite a funny story, was a Cro-Mag show. I don't know if it was in the Royal Court or somewhere in like 92, 93. There was like Simon Kelly, Bilzo, all the old Liverpool heads were there, maybe Bryce Hale, people like that. And before Cro-Mags were due to come on, a lot of the crowd, like all the Liverpool heads were going easy, easy, easy to Robbie Brookside, like that as the big daddy, thing of thing. There's like a little poke of fun at him, and he kept turning around Robbie Brookside and saying, "I'm not fucking big daddy, knock that off," kind of thing. And he kept going easy. So in the end, he said, "I swear to God, I'm gonna fucking get hold of yous." So then when the Cro-Mags came on, he turned around and he started running at them all, and they were all legging it everywhere, and he was literally picking them all up. I mean, if you look at Robbie Brookside in the ring, I guess he's wrestled for WWE and WCW. He doesn't look that big compared to the big wrestlers, but it's all relative, because I'm sure if he was stood next to like a normal person, he must be a giant if he's a wrestler. And it's just a funny story that Cy Kelly would tell me that he'd be picking them all up, grabbing them for winding them up with the easy chance. He'd be picking people up and throwing them onto the crowd and stuff. But yeah, Robbie Brookside is my second pick.
Nice. Okay, so next pick for me, I'm going for Wil Wheaton, who's an actor, most famously, I guess, for Stand By Me, and also
Hail a Chance.
Star Trek as well. I think he was in one of the Star Trek series. But he plays himself in the Big Bang Theory as well, and he's a lifelong, since he was a very young man, a fan of punk. Again, I've heard him on a few podcasts, interviews, and just by chance, like I hadn't really aware that he was into it until a few years ago, and I heard him on something, and he was talking about the Germs, he was talking about the Go-Go's, Dead Kennedys, Bad Religion, all these kind of bands. And the online, what's it called, Punk Rock Karaoke, there's a video of him doing Police Truck by Dead Kennedys as well. And I just, you know what, every time I like this guy because he just seems like a really, really nice, just quite down to earth. He was a child star, like, as well. And
I only know him as Gordy LaChance. Exactly. Stand By Me, so I don't really know much about the guy.
And he just seems like a really, really nice dude, and very humble, down to earth, and he's very, very passionate, very into his punk music, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah. This is a bit of an annoying one because I was going to pick between Josh Brolin and Keanu Reeves. Right now, I was going to go Josh Brolin for the simple reason that Josh Brolin is a fantastic actor and Keanu Reeves is a fantastic person who I don't necessarily think is a great actor. Now, obviously, Keanu Reeves is known for his love of, is very humble demeanour in public, the way he is with people. It's, well documented, a very, very nice person. However, Josh Brolin is a fantastic actor. Josh Brolin is someone who started off as a child actor or a young actor in like the Goonies, wouldn't really call him a child really at that point, and in films like Thrashing. But as he turned into a middle-aged actor and he got into like No Country for Old Men and stuff like that, and even Everest, like his performances are just fantastic. I was one of the rare people who liked Old Boy, the Spike Lee version with Josh Brolin. I thought he was brilliant in that. But we have this policy, as you know, that we can't pick the same pick twice, right? Because Geoff actually already picked him because he used to be the drummer in like Rich Kids on LSD,
very early,
right? So on the last video we did, where famous people who used to be in punk bands, he picked Josh Brolin. So I can't pick Josh Brolin, so I'm gonna go for Keanu Reeves. Now, as I said, I don't think Keanu Reeves is the greatest actor ever. I think he's a pretty bad actor, actually. But you can't deny that his films are entertaining. You look at something like Point Break, even Speed. Speed was like one of them white knuckle thrill rides. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And Dennis Hopper as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And like obviously later his popcorn action stuff like John Wick.
And all that.
You know, I enjoy his movies. You know what I mean? I wouldn't, even something like The Devil's Advocate. I'm not a big fan of The Matrix like a lot of people are, but obviously going to the punk thing, what's that awful band he's in?
Dogstar.
Yeah, them. But I've seen him talk about punk where he talks about Black Flag, Bad Brains. Massive, massive punk fan. You just look at him, you can tell he's into his punk music. Even the way he talks, he reminds me a bit of Ron Baird when he talks.
Okay,
Do you know? So yeah, Keanu Reeves.
Nice. Okay. So number 4 for me, I've gone for Gillian Anderson. Gillian Anderson from X-Files fame, Dana Scully. Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. And I mean, yeah, obviously she was when I was a young man and got into the X-Files, I had a massive crush on her. Still do, to be fair. So her history with punk a little bit. She grew up in the 80s and she was from, I can't remember, it was like a Midwestern town. She said it was very Republican, there was like 6 other kids who were kind of into like punk and alternative stuff. So they got together, they go out and take drugs and cause shit. Apparently she tried to glue the school doors together and all kinds of mad shit like that. And she was into like Dead Kennedys and some other 80s hardcore stuff and some gothy stuff, I think, as well, like Susie and the Banshees and things like that. And I'm a fan of her anyway, genuinely, you know, all jokes about her being a hottie aside. She seems really cool, and I actually like her as an actress. I love X-Files is one of my all-time favourite TV shows anyway, so, you know, I hold her in high esteem just for that. So yeah, that's my thought. Well,
I've decided if you're going to go for a 90s babe, I'm going to go for a 90s babe, and I've gone Liz Hurley.
Nice.
I first remember seeing Liz Hurley when I was about 7 years old in the movie Passenger 57 with Wesley Snipes.
Amazing.
And she played one of the terrorists, one of Bruce Payne's terrorists. And if you're on a plane and Liz Hurley pulls a gun on you and is taking over the plane, you know, it's probably not the worst thing. There's probably worse hijackings you can have, isn't there?
Most people could point a gun at you.
Yeah. She's probably my first crush, I'd say, for sure.
Yeah.
I love the way both of us have gone fucking crimson now, by the way, with this little section. But
getting all bashful.
Yeah. But, and you know what? I only know that in the early 80s she was I don't know how deep her interest in punk went, but you've seen the pictures.
Yeah.
And she was, and she basically said her whole environment where she grew up back then was punk. The kids were punk. She was punk. You've seen the pictures. But you know what? I do like Liz Hurley though. I'm not just talking about her being such a beautiful looking woman and her being in Passenger 57 and Austin Powers and stuff. You know, she stood by Darren Goff when he was. You know, she was with Darren Goff and Hugh Grant, and they both treated her like shit, and she stood by them. Do you know what I mean?
Very true.
And you don't see much of her these days, do you? Really? But
No.
You know, on TV and that, like giving interviews. But I've seen photos of her. She's like 59 now or something. She still looks fantastic. So yeah, Liz Hurley.
Cool. All right, last one for me. I've gone for John Ross Bowie, who's maybe not the most famous, but you've definitely seen him if you watched, like, again, I think, well, he was in The Big Bang Theory and let's say a sitcom called Speechless and various other films. Again, someone I came across when I was listening to podcasts and just realised he fucking loves punk, grew up in it. He's a big fan of, like, melodic punk and hardcore, like Descendants. He loves the Dickies. He's into DOA, 7 Seconds, stuff like that. He's in a band called Eggheads, which is like a 3-piece. It's like power pop kind of thing. It's catchy as fuck though. Just seems like a really cool dude, and he still goes to shows, I believe, now, and tries to check out new bands. He's like still got passion for it. He's well in his 50s. And yeah, that, again, just seems like a really cool, nice guy, and I like his character and a couple of the things I've seen him in the sitcoms and that, and I loved it when he was talking about punk and going to shows and the stuff he was into and that when I was listening to it, and it was fucking amazing. So I went and checked out his band, like I say, and it's you know, it's just catchy, straight up, like kind of power pop trio thing. It's really good.
Yeah. My last pick is probably the most obvious pick, really. I've gone John Belushi.
Amazing.
John Belushi, when you consider that he got Fear on Saturday Night Live, and that footage went on to be probably the most famous bit of footage, you know, well, certainly for punk on Saturday Night Live, but one of the most famous pieces of hardcore punk footage ever, I'd say.
Yeah, I think so.
Where you see all those faces, if you keep an eye out, you recognise some faces storming that stage, ultimately getting them banned from Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
But John Belushi, a flawed genius, you know. You think of these, like, flawed geniuses, don't you? You know, you look at... I mean, I feel a little bit sorry for Jim Belushi, because Jim Belushi is a good actor in his own right, but I feel like he's kind of overshadowed by John Belushi a little bit.
Unfortunately, he'll always live in that shadow.
Yeah, but you think of, like, his partnership with Dan Aykroyd, you know what I mean? And you think of, like, the Blues Brothers. I mean, he's a musical guy anyway, because if you watch the Blues Brothers or Animal House or any of those early Belushi films, the soundtrack's always fantastic.
Yeah.
Not necessarily punk all the time, but blues, rock and roll, R&B.
Anything with that spirit, though.
Anything with that. Kind of like that. Those guys kind of remind me of like Oliver Reed. Those.
Yeah.
Those guys that they get tanked. You wouldn't want to mess with them because they'd probably give you a slap. Those kind of guys. But yeah, he's probably the most famous one, isn't he? Especially with early hardcore scenes concerned.
Yeah.
But yeah, true flawed genius, I'd say he was John Belushi.
Amazing. Blues Brothers is one of my favourite films.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I love it.
Real.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, so there's our 5s. Gonna let us know yours, and the score. Give us some likes, subscribe, ring that bell if you want notifications. Jump on the socials. We're on Instagram and Facebook. Give us some messages, comments, follows, all that, and we love it. We'll see you next week.